Dorian. Hey, my name Dorian. That's
Bailey.
That's
Malachi.
Hey, and we're gonna be talking about the story of Gideon in the book of Judges. So it all starts with the Israelites. You know, they were taken over by the Midianites because they was doing evil in the eyes of the Lord, and because of this, He gave them over to the Midianites. And between all this, the Israelites start begging God, please send us a savior, and He does. The man's name was Gideon.
Gideon.
Now the weird thing about Gideon being their savior was he was the weakest member, the lowest member of the lowest tribe of all the Israelites. Now, you know, that's like picking the worst team in a sports game.
Like the Charlotte Hornets versus Golden State.
Yeah, that's like so unfair. Like, why would you do that? Pick the weakest member, the weakest sports team, or the weakest fighter.
Or maybe like a ladybug versus a lion.
Who's gonna win that?
That's a really...
I think the lion definitely gonna get that. So that's how people felt. Why would you pick Gideon to lead us against the Midianites, who has a huge army? Now, when this happens, you know, Gideon wanted a sign that God was really choosing him. So once he asked for the sign, he was like, all right, I'm gonna bring you an offering, right? I'm gonna get some food, I'm gonna get some meat, I'm gonna get some bread. And he brought it to the rock of Ophrah, right? Give. And then it caught on fire because the angel of God came through and caught it on fire. Now, Malachi, if you...
Oh, yeah. So he took this offering, right? And then the angel disappeared. But then he came back. This angel came back and he asked for something else to be done. So you know how Baal, the people used to worship Baal. Baal's a bull. And so Gideon's father worshipped Baal. He had a statue of Baal. So the angel asked Gideon to tear down the statue of Baal and instead take 2 bulls and sacrifice them to God. Make a burnt offering for these bulls and sacrifice them. So Gideon went with 10 of his helpers and he sacrificed these bulls. But then the townspeople, they woke up in the morning like, who tore down this statue of Baal? Like, who did that? So they were mad and they finally figured out that it was Gideon. So after that, the Midianites, they came over and they crossed the river and they camped where the Israelites were staying. So this was bad. They was like just taking over. They were camping. And so, right before...
camping like a video game?
Camping, I guess like a video game.
Or like in Call of Duty when he's just standing in the back of the door.
With the sniper?
Yeah, let's just wait for you to walk through.
Kind of like that, but not really actually. Oh my goodness, please don't fall. So anyways, we get back and so the angel of the Lord comes back to Gideon. He's like, hey, you got to do this, dog. You got to take him out. He's like, I don't know yet. Let's see. Give me one more sign. I'm going to get a fleece, okay? I'm going to put a fleece on the ground, okay? And this is how I'm going to know if it's a sign. This is my fleece. This is Dorian. You can't see him right now, but he a fleece on the ground. So if you make this fleece wet and the ground around it dry, I'll know that I need to do this. He's like, all right. The angel of the Lord was like, all right, okay, cool. He goes, wakes up the next morning. It's like that. Fleece is wet, ground is dry. He's like, all right, okay, cool. Now listen, wait a second, one more sign, just one more sign. Let's this time make the ground wet and the fleece dry. If you can do that, I'm gonna do this. I got you. He went to sleep, woke up the next morning, fleece dry, ground wet. Oh my goodness gracious.
He was asking God for all these.
He was asking God for all these signs, man. All these signs. Bailey, I'm gonna switch it over to you because you obviously know more than me.
So now Gideon was officially the general of the Lord's army, and he had thousands of men under his command. And the Lord said, you have too many people. You have too many people. So he told Gideon to announce to the army, and he said, tell your army that all of those who tremble in fear, leave. You gotta go. You gotta go. Just like Dorian leaves, those men left. But he still had too many. He still had 10,000 men left. So the Lord told Gideon, I will say who will stay and who will go. So Gideon sent his men down to the water to drink. Like so. Some of the men drank, they knelt down, drank from the water. Some of the men cupped their hands with the water and lapped like dogs. And the men who were doing what Malachi was doing, lapping from their hands, stayed. Guess how many men that was left? 300 out of the thousands, tens of thousands of men left. So now, fast forward to the Midianite camp. They were at nighttime. Gideon was kind of like scared a little bit. He was like, Lord, like, I don't know if I can do this. And the Lord told Gideon to go down to the camp and just check it out. And when Gideon was there, guess what he found out? He found out that the Midianites were just as scared as he was. So Gideon was like, all right, I got this. You know, they were like expecting big bad Gideon to come in with his armies and wipe them out. They didn't know what was coming. So then the Lord told Gideon, have his men be in different sections around the edge of the camp. They weren't even in there. They were just on the edges. They had their horns. They had their trumpets, you know, their torches, made a big racket, threw their clay pots, their fire everywhere, and the Midianites were scared, scattering. They were fighting each other. They were fighting each other. They're killing each other. And they, you know, God's army just standing on the edges, just watching until the Lord said, all right, they've wiped most of each other out. Go get them. And then Gideon pursued.
And that's how Gideon's world was turned upside down.
So Gideon's world was upside down. It was crazy. Things were not going well. He was oppressed and he had to hide. At the beginning, when we first meet him, he had to hide so that he could just have his food not be stolen from him. Crazy. And then God shows up and says, I got something for you, man. I need you to do something. And Gideon had a choice. Am I going to trust God? And then the next question was, am I going to obey him? And while it might have taken him a little bit of extra time to learn to trust him, remember all those different things that he had to do, the fleece on the ground and wet and all that stuff. Okay, but when he finally did trust God, then he had to decide whether or not he was going to listen to God. God said, you're going to be a general of a great army. And Gideon's like, great, that means I get to have an army, right? And God's like, well, sort of, an army of 300 instead of 30 some odd thousand. Gideon had to just trust and then obey. We think that we're supposed to follow normal human ways of doing things, but with God, God says, I've got something for you, and if you'll listen to me, if you follow my instructions, it will turn out better. And so that's what Gideon ultimately decided to do. He decided to listen to God, and when God said, hey, I'm not talking get out swords and start charging the people, what I'm saying is stand on the edges, start screaming and blowing horns and waving fire around, and I will win. And that's what he did. And so in this upside down world, Gideon followed God's instructions. In the upside down world, Gideon did what God wanted him to do, even though it didn't make sense. 300 men versus 135,000 warriors, it doesn't make sense. But Gideon trusted God. And when he trusted God, everything turned out a whole lot better than if he hadn't. Hey, love you guys. Have a good time with your small group tonight. Talk to you later.